Hey guys, my name is Daniel Escott, President and founder of the Canadian Youth Federation. And I'm sure at least some of you know what today is. It's the first anniversary of the CYF. 1 year ago today, I actually returned from a trip to Europe, and this has been a very large part of my life. Now, I haven't invested money in it because I lack the money to invest. But I have invested thousands of documents, hundreds of hours, and several other people have as well. Now, most of you actually don't know this story, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because this is how the Canadian Youth Federation was founded. The CYF was a product of myself, Kate McNeil, and Zachary Northcott. All three of us are co-founders. And the way this all started was really, I guess you could say, unorthodox, because I was actually on a trip to Europe with my school for the 95th anniversary of Vimy Ridge. And as a cadet, and as someone who's very, very proud of their country, I thought it was really, really important for me to be there for that. So I went to Amsterdam for the beginning of my journey. Then I went down to Belgium, and then I went through France to Vimy Ridge, and eventually through Paris, to which I flew home. But this all started in the outskirts of Amsterdam in a hostel at 3 a.m. I called Zach and we had this conversation about politics and youth, and how youth could be more involved. But we couldn't really figure out how, or how we're represented. So we started working on the idea, and it really just snowballed from there. From Monday to Friday, we ended up having about 5 different conversations about how to make it work. And eventually, at the evening of Friday, the day that I was coming home actually, I managed to, I guess you could say, theorize how to make it work. And then I called Zach and we really pieced it together like a puzzle. So when we got home, I launched the Facebook page, and it was actually called Youth in Politics. And we had no idea for a name. We really just wanted to get something out there to get our idea across. But we founded it on the principles of educating youth in politics, involving them in the political process, and representing them in the House of Commons. Now, I'm not saying that everybody here is going to get elected to Parliament. I don't plan on running for Parliament anytime soon. Maybe when I retire from the Air Force, or wherever I may be at the time. But that's my initial plan in life. But I'm 17. I shouldn't be running for politics. Now, what I'm saying is that youth, they do have subjects in school. You know, there is the, what is it? There's some course in Ontario, and there's some course in Quebec, and there's a few little ones around the other provinces about civics and politics in general. But I know in Newfoundland and Labrador specifically, which is where I live and where Zach lives, we don't have anything, not a single course, not a textbook, nothing, on how the political system works, or who the parties are, what their platforms are. I don't know about other provinces, but we don't have that here. And that was really a challenge for us, because not only did we want to start up essentially a new system of democracy, but we had no idea what we were getting into. So we ended up dedicating hours and hours and hours to just researching everything. Because even though we were still in youth parliaments and Model United Nations, we still had very little idea as to how complex this system really is, even though it hasn't been updated since 1867. Now, what we want to do is really revolutionize Canadian democracy. Because partisan politics, though it does have some merit, is really detrimental to not just democracy, but really just productivity in general. Because when I sat in on question period in the House of Commons during the Forum for Young Canadians, session 2, or was it session 3? One of the sessions. It was really disheartening, actually, because it was, I think it was 308 grown adults squabbling like little children. There was one point where I'm pretty sure the interim leader of the Liberal Party, Bob Rae, alluded to the fact that he called the Conservative Party ugly. There was another moment where Conservatives in their entirety just sort of disregarded all questions regarding the Panashaway incident, praising him for his service. And I know as a Newfoundlander and a Labradorian, that is really an insult, because as much as Peter Panashaway did serve as a Member of Parliament for Labrador, I guess you could say he's become synonymous in Newfoundland and Labrador with corruption and disgust. There's a lot of contempt towards him specifically. He plans on running in the next Labrador election for Parliament, and a lot of people are really starting to display that emotion. And some people are actually really, really emotional about it. There was an incident in Makavik where a child was, well, he died in a snowstorm because search and rescue couldn't respond to him. And when Peter Panashaway attended the conference regarding the issues with search and rescue and why the child was picked up, he was actually videotaped high-fiving Peter MacKay during the conference, and that went on, I'm not sure about the national news, but it certainly went on CBC Newfoundland and Labrador, and that raised a lot of controversy. And the House of Commons just plays it off like it didn't matter. Now, a lot of youth around the province and around the country have several opinions about different topics. I spoke with 97 other youth at the Forum for Young Canadians about topics that were really affecting them in their provinces. And a lot of them were oil pipelines and hydro plants and nuclear power and tuition. Tuition is a really big one, especially for myself, because I am just graduating this year. And the world outside of high school is a lot less friendly, not just financially, but just in general, rather intimidating. So the fact that I also have to fight for my right as a student is, well, let's just say that youth are being stepped on left, right, and center. And we aren't consulted with the fact that we are the ones that are going to be taking on this burden. The burdens the House of Commons passes. Now, the bills that they pass today really aren't going to be taking effect until we become adults. And the fact that we aren't represented in the House of Commons and provincial parliaments, the fact that they don't even consider consulting us on these topics, we may seem like we're just high school students and we won't know a lot about this, and I'll admit that argument does have some merit. A lot of high school students do focus on just their studies. They don't watch the news very often or anything like that. that can change. That can change very quickly. Because if they were to find out that, for example, if the House of Commons were to pass a bill saying that tuition is going to increase by 500%, for example, just a hypothetical situation, and youth found out, well, one, they weren't consulted on the prices that they were about to pay for the degrees that they require to pursue their career, and B, this is their money they're talking about. We're not talking about the members of parliament who are 50 and 60 years old. They don't need degrees. They're retiring in 5 or 10 years. We're talking about the people who are graduating this year and next year and the year after that. So the issues that really affect youth, we have no idea about. And when we do, we don't get a say. And that's really pivotal in the Canadian Youth Federation. We want to be able to give youth that voice. We don't necessarily have to be a youth parliament or a United Nations-esque group. We don't need to have thousands of members sitting around a room and arguing and bickering, and then they pass a piece of paper and they send it off to Parliament. What we do need to be able to do, if nothing else, is we need to be able to take youth out of protests and into business suits. We want to be able to put them in meetings with members of Parliament, with committees in Parliament, and for them to be able to say, well, your arguments are interesting, but here's the youth perspective. Here's what the youth have been saying about this. And to my knowledge, that has not been brought up in Parliament. And in a democracy that says that we represent all the people, you know, the whole by the people, for the people statement, that really, really needs to be put into place, one way or the other. Whether it's Elections Canada that does it, or House of Commons picks up on it, or we get to it first. We are running a race. I'm not saying that they're going to do it. I'm saying we are. I founded this organization a year ago with that purpose. I made a promise to myself, to Zachary, to Kate, to the people who continue to support me today, to every single one of you. I promise that we are going to see that true democracy. That we are going to move forward into a world of tomorrow where youth are proud to say that they helped create this world. Because the world that these people are playing with now is the world that we are inheriting tomorrow. And that sounds like a rather vague statement, but think about people who are graduating this year, like myself. I'm not inheriting anything that was passed today, because that's not taking effect until next year. What I'm inheriting tomorrow is what was passed last year. So we really need to take a step forward in molding our own world instead of letting other people try to manipulate it for us and say, well, it's in the youth's best interest. Well, in my opinion, I think it's about time that youth had that opportunity to say, well, we're youth, and this is what we think is in our own best interest. Because I don't mean any offense to anyone, but to be completely serious, I'm very certain that someone in the House of Commons who is 50 or 60 years old is not very in touch with how youth see the world and how youth are going to experience the world in 30 or 40 years' time. So the world that we inherit should be a part of our lives already, not something that's been pushed on us by someone else. So what I want to leave you with today is a very crisp, very clear message. If we as youth want to progress into a true democracy where youth are treated with equality and fairness, so as a youth we are treated the same as someone who's 30 or 40 years our senior, that we as youth can take protests and turn them into business meetings. That we don't need to fight for what we feel is our rights. We can just dress up in a suit and go talk to someone, and our voices are heard in the House of Commons and provincial parliaments. That is a world that I know I would be proud to be a part of. And I think you would too. Good night.